The palace was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. Not the calm that comes after victory. This was the kind that pressed against the ears, heavy and wrong, like the world itself was holding its breath and forgetting why. The Dragon Empress sat alone in the center of the great hall. Her throne still towered behind her, carved from black stone and dragon bone, but she no longer sat upon it. Instead, she rested in a simple wheelchair of dark steel and leather. It was positioned carefully so she could still face the long doors, the banners, the empty space where crowds once stood. The banners hung without movement. Red and gold dragons stitched into silk stared down at her, frozen in eternal fire. They remembered her better than her people did. Today was her birthday. Once, this day had shaken the empire. Bells rang from city to city. Dragons flew in wide circles above the capital, their shadows passing like clouds. Nobles competed to bring the most impressive gifts. Kings from distant lands sent envoys loaded with gold, jewels, and promises they never planned to keep. Once, the world lined up to be seen by her. Now, the doors remained closed. No footsteps echoed across the marble floor. No music drifted in from the galleries. No servant announced the hour. Even the guards had been reduced to a single pair far down the hall, standing stiff and silent, careful not to look at her for too long. The Dragon Empress, once called the Flame of Dawn, the last sky tyrant, the unbroken, rested her hands in her lap. They were steady, strong, scarred. Her legs, hidden beneath a dark cloak, did not move. Years ago, during the War of Ash, she had descended personally onto the battlefield. Not from pride, but necessity. The enemy had brought weapons designed to kill dragons, and her generals were dying too fast. She had won the battle. She had crushed the enemy lines, melted their machines, and burned their commanders where they stood. The Empire still celebrated that victory every year. But at the very end, a weapon fired too late, too desperate to aim properly. A shard of enchanted metal struck her spine as she turned away. The dragon did not fall that day. The Empress did. Healers saved her life. Mags stopped the bleeding. Priests declared it a miracle. But miracles, she learned, had limits. She never walked again. At first, the court had stayed. They spoke loudly about loyalty. They swore oaths. They said her mind was still sharp, her fire still powerful, her rule still rightful. Then time passed. And excuses grew. Meetings were shortened. Councils were postponed. Decisions were delayed for her comfort. Commanders stopped asking for her presence. Nobles stopped bringing their children to bow before her. Dragons still respected strength. People respected appearances. The wheelchair became a symbol no one wanted to see. The Empress exhaled slowly, a thin trail of smoke leaving her lips before fading into the air. She did not notice it anymore. She had learned control long ago. A small table stood beside her. On it sat a single object, a plain metal cup, filled with water that had long gone untouched. No cake. No candles. No gift boxes wrapped in silk. No one had even bothered to ask what she wanted this year. She glanced toward the tall windows lining the hall. Outside, the sky was gray, clouds led thick and low. Dragons preferred wide, open skies. Today, even they stayed away. She smiled faintly. So this is how it ends, she murmured, her voice low and calm. Not with fire. Not with rebellion. Just, forgetting. The words echoed softly, unanswered. Her title still commanded the empire. Her seal still marked laws. Her name still appeared in songs. But presence mattered. And she had been quietly removed from the world without ever leaving her palace. A distant sound reached her ears. Metal. A dull clang, far below the hall. Then another. Followed by the low rush of water through stone. She frowned. Maintenance was usually handled at night, when the court slept and the Empress was not expected to move through the palace. No one liked to risk being seen near her without reason. The sound came again. Closer this time. Voices, muffled, unfamiliar. The Empress straightened slightly in her chair. Someone was in her palace today. On her birthday. And for the first time in a long while, the silence cracked. She did not know it yet, but fate had already taken a wrong turn. Not because of prophecy. Not because of destiny. But because a human plumber had shown up for work on the loneliest day of a dragon's life. The sound grew louder as the hours passed. Pipes groaned beneath the palace floor. Water rushed, then stopped, then rushed again. The Empress listened closely, her sharp hearing picking up details no servant would notice. Someone was working hard. Someone who did not seem afraid of the place. By midday, The great doors at the side of the hall opened. Not wide. Just enough. A man stepped inside, carrying a heavy metal toolbox in one hand and a coil of pipe over his shoulder. He wore simple clothes, dark trousers, a thick shirt, and boots stained with old rust and oil. His hair was messy. His face was tired. He smelled faintly of iron and soap. He stopped as soon as he saw her. Not because she was terrifying, but because he hadn't expected anyone to be there. "Oh," he said, blinking. "Sorry. I didn't know this hall was in use." The guards at the far end stiffened. One of them started forward. The Empress raised a hand. The guard stopped immediately. The man noticed this. His eyes flicked from the guards to her chair, then to her face. Confusion crossed his expression, but not fear. Not awe. Just uncertainty. "It's fine," the Empress said. Her voice carried easily across the hall. "You're not interrupting anything." He hesitated. Then, awkwardly, he scratched the back of his head. "Right," he said. "Good. Because the north conduit burst again. Whole section's a mess. They told me to check the main line near this hall." He paused. "Should I come back later?" The Empress studied him carefully. Most people avoided meeting her eyes. This man didn't stare, but he didn't look away either. He wasn't bowing. He wasn't kneeling. He didn't even seem to realize he was supposed to. "No," she said after a moment. "You may continue." He nodded once. "All right." He walked past her, not rushing, not sneaking, setting his toolbox down near one of the stone columns. The sound echoed loudly in the empty hall. He winced slightly, as if realizing just how quiet the place was. He worked for a few minutes in silence, kneeling near a floor grate. Tools clinked. Steam hissed softly. The Empress watched him from her chair, curiosity slowly replacing the dull ache she had grown used to. Finally, the man spoke again. "Big place," he said. "Feels empty." She almost laughed. "Yes," she replied. "It does." He glanced over his shoulder. "You live here alone?" The guard stiffened again. The Empress lifted her hand once more. "Calm. Steady. For the most part," she said. "That's rough," he said without thinking. Then froze. Sorry. I didn't mean." "It's accurate," she said. He relaxed slightly. "Yeah. I get it. I live alone too. Not in a palace. Just a room over a bakery. But quiet's quiet, no matter the size." He tightened a valve, then leaned back on his heels and sighed. "By the way," he added, glancing at her again, "I'm Thomas." She did not answer right away. No one had spoken her name casually in years. Titles were safer. Titles created distance. "I am the Empress," she said finally. He frowned. "Right. Of course you are." She raised an eyebrow. Then understanding dawned on his face. "Oh." He stood up too fast, nearly dropping his wrench. "Oh no. Oh no, 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 I didn't, I mean, Your Majesty, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize." "Stop," she said gently. He stopped. "You spoke to me like a person," she continued. "That is not a crime." He swallowed. "Still. I should bow or something." "You may," she said. "If you wish." He hesitated. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "With respect," he said carefully, "I don't think you want that right now." Silence filled the hall again. The Empress felt something shift inside her chest. Small. Unfamiliar. "You are observant for a plumber," she said. He smiled faintly. "Comes with fixing things people don't want to look at." She looked at the toolbox. The worn gloves. The grease-stained hands. "And why," she asked, "are you working today?" He shrugged. "Extra pay. Plus, no one else wanted the job." He paused, then added, "Also, it's your birthday, isn't it?" Her breath caught. "Yes," she said quietly. Thomas nodded once, walked over, and placed a small wrapped pastry on the table beside her cup of water. Then, he said simply, "Happy birthday." No bow. No fear. Just a human plumber, standing in a silent hall, treating a forgotten dragon like she still mattered. The Empress did not speak right away. She stared at the small pastry on the table as if it was something rare and dangerous. It was wrapped in plain paper, slightly crushed on one side. A corner of sugar dust had spilled onto the stone. It was the first gift she had received in years. "You did not have to do that," she said at last. Thomas shrugged. "I know. That's why it counts." She let out a quiet breath. A thin curl of smoke slipped from her lips before fading. Thomas noticed it this time, but he didn't step back. He pulled the pastry closer to her. It's still warm. Bakery downstairs. They mess up a lot of things, but birthdays aren't one of them. Slowly, carefully, she picked it up. Her hands were large, marked with old burns and scars, but they did not shake. She broke off a small piece and tasted it. Honey. Spice. Something simple. Something real. It's good, she said. Yeah, he replied. Figured. He went back to work, tightening pipes and sealing joints. The sounds of tools filled the hall again, but the silence felt different now. Lighter. Less sharp. After a while, she spoke. You are not afraid, she said. Thomas glanced back. Of what? Of me. He thought about it as he wiped his hands on a cloth. I guess, he said slowly, I was. Before I walked in. Dragons and emperors and all that. And now? She asked. He looked at her wheelchair. At the way she sat straight, her chin high, her eyes tired but sharp. Now you just look like someone who's been sitting alone too long. The words were honest. Not cruel. Not kind. Just true. She nodded. You see clearly, she said. Most do not. They see what they expect, Thomas replied. Hard to fix a pipe if you're scared to touch it. She smiled at that. A real smile this time. They spoke as he worked. Not about politics. Not about the court. About small things. His trade. How old pipes lied about their strength. How leaks never started loud, they waited. She told him about the palace before the war. About flying from tower to tower. About the sound of wings over stone. She did not speak of pain. She did not speak of anger. But she did not hide the truth either. I was never afraid of losing my throne, she said quietly. I was afraid of being useless. Thomas tightened one last bolt and stood. You're not, he said at once. She looked up at him. You do not rule anymore, he continued, choosing his words carefully. That doesn't mean you stopped being who you were. She watched him for a long moment. No one had said that to her before. When he finished, he packed his tools. The water ran smooth and quiet now. He slung the toolbox over his shoulder and turned toward the door. I'll be back tomorrow, he said. They'll find something else wrong. They always do. She surprised herself. I would like that, she said. He smiled. Good. As he left, the hall did not feel empty. For the first time since her fall, the Dragon Empress felt something she had thought was gone forever. Not hope. Connection. The next morning, the palace did not wake gently. Whispers moved faster than footsteps. Servants spoke behind hands. Guards shifted positions more often than usual. A human had been seen in the great hall. A human who spoke freely. A human who stayed longer than required. By midday, the court knew. The Empress sat in the same place as the day before, her posture calm, her hands folded. The empty table beside her still held crumbs of sugar. She had not ordered them cleaned away. The side doors opened again. This time, Thomas was not alone. He entered carrying his toolbox, but two guards walked close behind him. Not rough. Not kind. Careful. As if touching him too hard might anger someone far more dangerous. Behind them came three nobles. They wore long robes and polished jewelry. Their faces were tight with forced patience. Your Majesty, one of them said, bowing low. We must speak. You are already speaking, the Empress replied. The noble straightened. His eyes flicked to Thomas, then to the wheelchair, then away. This human, he said, has overstepped his role. He lingered without permission. He spoke improperly. It is inappropriate. Thomas shifted his weight. I can leave if. No, the Empress said. The word was soft. It stopped the room. She turned her gaze to the nobles. He was invited. By me. Another noble cleared her throat. Your Majesty, appearances matter. The court has worked hard to preserve dignity. Strength. Is that what you call this? The Empress asked. Preservation. Silence. The Empire whispers that I am fragile, she continued. That I must be hidden away for my own good. That I am a reminder of weakness. No one argued. Thomas looked at her, surprised. She placed her hands on the arms of her wheelchair and leaned forward slightly. I lost the use of my legs, she said. Not my mind. Not my fire. Not my right to decide who may stand before me. The first noble swallowed. Still, he is only a plumber. Yes, she said. And yet he came. That landed harder than any accusation. He did not bow out of fear. He did not flatter me for favor. He did not pretend I was already gone, she said, her voice steady. He spoke to me. He listened. He remembered my birthday. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. Thomas stared at the floor, uncomfortable. If the Empire believes that strength only exists in standing, the Empress went on, then the Empire has forgotten what strength is. She looked at Thomas. Go on, she said gently. Finish your work. The guards hesitated. Then stepped aside. Thomas knelt by the pipes again, hands steady, heart pounding. He did not look at the nobles. He focused on the work. On what he knew. Behind him, the Empress addressed the court. I will no longer be hidden, she said. I will attend council. I will hear petitions. And I will do so as I am. One noble opened his mouth. Closed it again. You may leave, she said. They bowed, deeper this time, and withdrew. When the doors closed, the hall felt larger. Clearer. Thomas finished quickly. When he stood, he finally looked at her. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. I did. He nodded. Then, see you tomorrow? She smiled. Yes, she said. Tomorrow. And for the first time in years, the court left the hall knowing something had changed. The Dragon Empress had not risen from her chair. But she had stood her ground. The council chamber had not seen her in a long time. When the doors opened, conversation stopped mid-word. Nobles froze where they stood. Advisors turned slowly. Guards straightened, unsure whether to announce her or kneel. The Dragon Empress entered in her wheelchair, pushed not by servants, but by herself. Her cloak was simple. Her crown rested lightly on her head, unchanged by time. She did not look smaller. She looked focused. Continue, she said. The room obeyed. Word spread quickly after that day. She listened. She questioned. She decided. Petitions that had waited months were resolved in hours. Corruption was uncovered, not by force, but by attention. The Empire remembered something it had forgotten. She was still dangerous. Not because she could burn cities, but because she could not be ignored. Thomas continued to come. Sometimes to fix pipes. Sometimes because there were none left to fix. He brought bread. He brought quiet jokes. He never asked for reward. He never asked for protection. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the palace in gold, she spoke. You changed my fate, she said. Thomas shook his head. I just showed up. She smiled. So did I. Once. The nobles adapted. Slowly. Carefully. Some left. Others learned. The empire shifted, not loudly, not violently, but permanently. On the anniversary of the War of Ash, the Empress addressed the people. She did not stand. She did not hide. My strength was never my wings, she said. It was my will. And that has not broken. The crowd answered her with silence first. Then with thunder. That night, she returned to the great hall. The same hall where she had once waited alone on her birthday. It was not quiet anymore. Candles burned. Voices echoed. Dragons circled above the towers, their shadows moving across the stone like living fire. Thomas stood at the edge of it all, uncomfortable as ever. She rolled beside him. Stay, she said. He nodded. All right. Not as a hero. Not as a legend. Just as a human who had fixed what mattered. And the Empire learned a final truth. A dragon does not need to stand. To shape the world.